What forms do Canadian employees need to complete? When a US company hires someone in Canada, the first practical question is usually, what forms do they have to fill out? The answer is more structured than many owners expect. Canadian Payroll and HR rely on a small set of core documents that show who the employee is, how to calculate withholdings, and where to send their pay. On top of that, there are forms linked to benefits, provincial rules, and year-end reporting. If you think of it as a toolkit, you have identity and registration information at the front, tax credit and payroll setup forms in the middle, and end-of-year slips as the closing step. Identity and core HR information. Every employment relationship starts with simple identification and HR intake. Canadian employees will typically provide their legal name, address, and social insurance number. That social insurance number is used for payroll reporting, pension and insurance contributions, and later for linking earnings history to benefits. Alongside identification, you collect basics like emergency contact information and bank details if you are paying by direct deposit. None of this is unique to Canada, but treating it as a formal intake step matters, especially for foreign employers. It ensures your records match official reporting and reduces mistakes when you start running payroll. Tax credit forms for income tax withholding. To calculate income tax withholding correctly, Canadian employees complete standard tax credit forms. At the federal level, there is a form where the employee claims personal amounts and, where applicable, other credits that reduce the default withholding. Each province has its own companion form reflecting provincial credits and rates. These forms tell you how much basic tax-free room the employee has and whether they have requested additional withholding for personal reasons. Without them, you have to use default assumptions, which can make withholding too high or too low. For foreign employers, getting these forms completed early is one of the cleanest ways to avoid mismatched expectations about take-home pay. Enrollment forms for direct deposit and benefits. Most modern employers pay by direct deposit, so employees complete a form that captures their banking information. Sometimes they supply a void check or a bank-generated document with account numbers. This is not legally complex, but it is essential for making sure pay goes where it should and that any last pay or adjustments at termination are delivered smoothly. If you offer health, dental, disability, or other benefits through a Canadian plan, there will also be enrollment forms for those plans. Employees may need to choose coverage levels, list dependents, and designate beneficiaries where applicable. These benefits forms matter because in Canada, public health care and private benefits interact differently than in the United States, and employees do not always understand the lines unless the documentation is clear. HR policy acknowledgments and local rules. Even if your HR policies originate in the United States, Canadian employees should receive and acknowledge policies that have been adapted to local law. That might include codes of conduct, harassment and violence policies, health and safety acknowledgments, and any province-specific policies required by employment standards or occupational safety rules. The acknowledgement is often a simple form or electronic confirmation that the employee has received and read the policies. For a foreign employer, this paper trail becomes important if a dispute arises later or if regulators want to see how you communicated obligations to workers in Canada. Employment agreements and offer letters. While not technically a form in the same sense as a tax credit document, an employment agreement or detailed offer letter is central to the relationship. It sets out duties, compensation, working hours, vacation, termination terms, and any restrictive covenants. In Canada, employment contracts must be consistent with minimum standards set by provincial law. You cannot contract out of statutory minimums. For a US company, adapting standard offer letters to Canadian conditions is essential. Having the employee sign this agreement or letter as part of the onboarding package is how you prove that both sides understood the basic terms. Year-end slips for reporting earnings. At the end of the year, or when employment ends, Canadian employees receive reporting slips that summarize their earnings and the payroll deductions taken. The most common slip is the one that captures employment income, income tax withheld, and contributions to pension and employment insurance. Employees use this slip when they file their Canadian personal tax return. As a foreign employer with a payroll account, you are responsible for preparing and issuing these slips on time, as well as filing copies with the authorities. Employees do not fill out these slips, they receive them. But the obligation to produce them correctly is a key part of your side of the paperwork. Other situational forms. Depending on the circumstances, other forms can appear. For example, if an employee takes certain types of leave, you may need to issue a record of employment so they can apply for benefits. If a worker claims special exemptions or situations, additional documentation may be needed. These are not everyday onboarding forms, but they reinforce the idea that Canadian employment is tightly connected to a set of standardized documents. Final thoughts. Canadian employees do not drown in forms, but the ones they complete matter. Identity information, tax credit forms, banking details, benefits enrollment, policy acknowledgments, and a properly drafted employment agreement form the backbone of a compliant employment relationship. At year-end, clear reporting slips close the loop. If you are a US company building your first small team in Canada, setting up a simple, repeatable onboarding package with these elements will make everything from payroll to compliance much easier. For more step-by-step help in the same straightforward tone, you can visit www.theaccountingandtax.com. If you require assistance with Canadian tax matters, our team is ready to provide reliable professional support. Please contact us at 416-283-8774 or visit theaccountingandtax.com for more information. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.